presentation today. I want to just talk briefly about our first staff presentation that we actually had. First of all, ground rules again. If there are any comments, what we're going to ask is that you say your name. And so Brenda has it for the tape recording for our minutes, which we actually will put online. So our last staff presentation, I thought, went very well. Rose Heckthorn, as transportation supervisor, was the first person to actually do this. So first of all, kudos to Rose for being the guinea pig for the very first person. So thank you very much. What we noticed came out of that meeting, and you'll see that I actually sent around an email to the BAC committee. A lot of great ideas came out of that meeting. A lot of questions came out of that meeting. And every single one of them was a valid question, and every one of them was a good idea. What we did find is we really were pressed for time, quite honestly. I mean, we have a short period of time to get the financial information for the budget next year through all of these presentations. Now, we're going to have many presentations throughout the entire budget process, but it is brief in nature, obviously, to get all that information out. We know that with the presentations that we have, there's a lot of good information coming out of there. It's going to generate a lot of ideas. The way we've actually structured it for tonight is that each speaker will have about 10 minutes to speak, maximum, and then with questions and answers following that. So we've left about 5 minutes for a Q&A. And I'm going to be the bad cop here just for the time police, I'll be watching the clock. If we get long on that, what we're going to do is ask everyone to write down the questions via email, and we'll make sure the entire committee gets the question and also the answers as well. So everything will be addressed. The one thing that I would say also is just, again, a little more ground rules. We covered a lot of territory at the last meeting. Our primary focus as a budget advisory team is looking and drafting and creating a budget for next year. Some of the things which came out of the meeting last month were ideas for other committees. Looking at converting the district fleet, great idea. Will it necessarily be in next year's budget? No, it's a great idea. We have to study it, look at that. Potentially retrofitting or capital project for changing over the transportation office. Again, this isn't necessarily the committee that's going to look at that per se. That might be, again, more for a capital project. There are going to be some which will deal with educational initiatives, and we'll find the right place for that if it's not a direct fit for the budget advisory team. So keep the ideas coming. Again, if it's something direct for here, we'll talk about that. If not, we'll direct you to the right place for that. So looking at tonight's lineup that we have Kelly Morgan LaRosa for Director of Curriculum and Instruction. She will go first. Then we will have the three principals up at the same time. We'll have Lauren Carter for the GLP, the Mark Raff for elementary, and Jess Rivoni for the high school, junior, senior high school present. And we're going to do a combined question and answer for them since they're all buildings. After that, you will have the superintendent present on the superintendent's budget, and yours truly for the finance budget. A lot to get through. Kelly, you're up.
Okay. Hi, I'm Kelly LaRosa, the Director of Curriculum, Instruction, Staff Development, and Guidance. And I'm going to start by just kind of telling you about some initiatives that are going on in that department and throughout the district. And our planning for next year involves a foundation of the consideration for all our state initiatives which are going on, which generally come down to having all students graduate college and career ready. So that's kind of our guiding principle when thinking about what we're doing. That planning involves ensuring three main things: that we have the curriculum and resources aligned to meet that goal, making sure teachers have the training that they need to utilize the resources and instructional strategies, and using data to inform and guide our instruction. So when those things work in tandem, we can definitely meet the board initiative, which is goal number 2, which is having to increase academic rigor for all students and raise expectations for all students. So that's what we're all working towards. Rigor is a term that we've heard a lot over the past year, and some examples of rigor are creating fidelity throughout classrooms and throughout grade levels, which we're going to be doing in our new math program. Using data to shape instruction and differentiate instruction for all the students. Training on specific instructional strategies.
Kelly, can I interrupt for a quick second? Did you pass around your budget?
I did.
Okay. It's still coming around? Okay.
Oh, wait a second.
Just in case
Oh,
we-
pass it that way? Okay.
And just also, we did ask everyone to print out the materials. We figured for this first one with so many that we would print them all just in case. If everyone hasn't printed for the most part, what we'll do is just print maybe 1 or 2 copies for the next meeting. Did most people bring theirs? If not everyone, then we'll just print a few copies next time so we're saving on the trees, minimizing the cost to the district. Got it.
Okay, couple more examples of increasing rigor are making sure we have the proper text available for students at every grade level, executing better technology instruction in the classroom, for example, utilizing the flipped classroom strategy, creating opportunities at the high school level for students to become college and career ready, for example, creating a business academy that would allow them to do that. So what I want to highlight for you specifically within the budget are 3 areas that serve that purpose. The first one, you can see we have lines in the budget that are dedicated for BOCES trainings. So what the BOCES trainings provide is an excellent opportunity for our teachers to receive training from BOCES instructors that have firsthand knowledge of all the initiatives going on, because they receive training in Albany. So an example of that was, we have department chairs that go 4 times a year to forums that connect them with teachers in other districts so they can hear the latest initiatives that are going on, the way other districts are executing it, what materials they're using, and they can collaborate with those teachers to bring back and share with our teachers in the district. And we also have that going on at the primary and elementary level. Those teachers go to forums 4 times. One teacher goes to a forum 4 times a year in either science, social studies, math, or ELA. Then they bring the information back here and share it with teachers in our district. BOCES also offers very specific trainings to support all the initiatives, such as using data in the classroom to inform your instruction and help the students obtain higher levels of achievement, creating valid assessments in your classroom, and using technology. So that's kind of where that money goes to for BOCES. Teachers also attend outside conferences, which are not offered by BOCES, but are very more specific and tied to outside organizations such as Erie County Music Association, the Business Teachers Association, National Reading Council. So that provides information for those teachers to, again, bring back and share with the other teachers in this area. The major portion is going towards textbooks and making sure we have materials that are aligned to meet the new state initiatives. Currently, we are piloting 2 different math programs to see which one meets the needs of our students and is best aligned with the state standards. So we have a committee that's currently researching, trying out both programs and making the decision of which program they're going to recommend. That's where a major portion of the GLP and elementary budget would go. There's a bit of an increase there because those programs are offering, both companies are offering us the option, if we buy a 5-year program, we have an upfront cost, but then we don't have any cost for the next 4 years. So it's a little bit a hit the first year, but then we don't have to spend any money the next 4 years in that area.
Which one was that?
That's for math, would be elementary math, K through 5, so it's in the textbook line, more towards the bottom for the GLP and the elementary building.
So that would be 1, 2, or 2?
That would be 2 and 4.
So 2110-480-02, 2110-480-04. So the regular.
And also for 02 and 04, we still purchase materials for the students for their reading development in the skills area, and also that still is happening at the elementary building. Moving on to the high school, we're supporting new literature and new book purchases for social studies and the English department. And we're also looking at foreign language textbooks and science materials to update what those teachers have to offer.
So can you elaborate on that for a minute? Because one of the big initiatives is to do more nonfiction.
Yes, that's, Yep, one of the shifts in the ELA is to make sure every teacher has a balance. If you're in an English classroom, you have a balance. You're not just reading literary text, you're reading nonfiction also. And to have a staircase of complexity, which means you have to be reaching higher levels of text in each grade level. And using those documents then and books to develop your writing. So it all kind of ties together. So those are the major areas, the teacher training and the resources and materials the teacher has to make sure we're reaching better achievement for our students.
Are any of these, like software, computer, or anything? It's all just books?
It's all just books. The math program does have a technology component embedded in it. So
For most of the software, what you're going to see,
Yeah.
that will be under Lucinda's section when she actually presents.
Oh, okay.
What we're seeing right now is there's some crossover in some lines, but if it's specific to software, again, it's IT. So, there you go.
But if I can carry it for a moment, the idea of going to green and going to digital is a conversation that started before I came, honestly. We just want to make sure that when we purchase those digital textbooks, that they're exactly what we want, and that we can support our students who don't have digital from the computers.
And I
Yep.
think one thing
Yep.
that we saw here is that from Kelly's perspective, taking that macro, making sure that there's fidelity across the grades.
Yep.
And you can see some of the movement between lines to accommodate that. Mr. Johnson, you had a question?
I got a couple questions.
Sure.
Is there any economic benefit to not buying the textbooks, but putting,
All electronic.
I couldn't hear.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear.
It is going to be a multi-year process. We are moving towards that.
Just one setting topic, you couldn't hear. I don't think
Oh, sorry, that's probably my voice too, is there is an economic benefit to it if we make the right purchases. And so we just want to make sure with the shift in all of the curriculum and the textbooks, that when we do shift over into digital, that we're purchasing exactly what we want. And what's nice about digital is that many times, whatever annotated or amended text they have, you don't have to pay extra for. Well, when you have a textbook, you really do. So that conversation started well before I came.
Yes.
But we're still waiting for this curriculum to work its way through, not from the state, but our own too, to say we're comfortable with this, or we want to trade this novel for this one, or whatever it could be.
I have one more question.
Sure.
Well, and I just want to touch on that further. There's the other component for us to keep in mind, too. We need to have the computer technology and the infrastructure in place to handle
Yes.
all of that. So trust me, that is a conversation that's going on between Kelly and Lucinda to make sure that we can handle
Right.
that. And right now, we can't. We're getting there. We're getting prepared. You'll hear in some of Lucinda's. So we can't just go full digital right now. It is a process. Okay, Mr. Thompson, more questions?
This will be the last one. I'm not even sure what the tax cap is this year, but I'm pretty sure you're exceeding it extensively. I'm not saying
Yeah.
you shouldn't,
Uh-huh.
okay? Okay? But where's the,
What we're looking at here is we asked each department for supplies and materials only
Right.
to stay at about the 5% range, which is about the tax cap, but the majority of what our budget is are in salaries. So we do know that with materials, they are going to go up anywhere between 5 to 10 in most given years. So that is not a huge surprise, but again, that's not the majority of our costs. So what we actually put in here is what goes into that initial budget. So when we look at the budget as a whole and get to that point and we see where we end, we may still be cutting. This is not a final. So this is our starting point right
It's
here.
just the process.
So this is actually draft one of our budget. The draft is now the buildings, supplies and materials. Then when we get to next week, draft two with other presentations going on, then we're going to add in staffing. We're layering this. So when we get to the end, we'll have the full budget. Then we can say, okay, are we going to be cutting or are we okay? And we have actually some good news on some fronts. So right now, I'm not saying that they should be below the 5% because we don't know where the final is going to end up. If we cut it bare bones now and you have people cut or go even lower than that, it's harder to bring it back. So they need to do that, and then we can.
I'm looking at these numbers, and I mean,
First-
it's a drastic dip, most of them in the 2012, 2013 year, and I don't know if that was by design, or they were using you as a guinea pig, or do you understand?
Right.
And then you jumped it back up again.
Well, we had a major, you're talking in the 13-14 budget, are you talking,
The
or?
12 to 13, a couple of them went up, but some of them, I mean,
One's a budget,
Are you talking
and
budget
then
or
the one's
expenses?
one's expensed.
So don't look at the expense side, that's just kind of a gauge is what was spent, but you're looking year to year for the most part from the budgets. Last year's budget as a whole was lower. We had a big deficit last year to fill. And so you're seeing a lot of the final budgets last year were much lower because of that, which is why we accessed positions last year. We're not in the same position that we were last year. We also made a very conscious decision last year to not utilize all our reserves. So we have actually accounted for that. We did reduce positions. So what you're seeing this year is a budget more in line probably with what 12-13 was. Okay, any further questions for Kelly, please email her, because we want to make sure we leave time for everyone. Ms. Carter, if you can switch seats. Mrs. Carter, excuse me. And I believe you have handouts to pass for everyone as well?
Just for, none of these were actually labeled.
Actually labeled?
So
We'll
I
have to
don't
do that
know
in the
which is
future.
which.
Yep.
Yeah, they
So-
weren't labeled. Just,
Okay. Yep, not a problem. So if you can mark the first one, curriculum,
Yeah, I did that.
and then the one that's coming around now, just if you can mark GLP.
Yeah, I know this is the right one, but
It does bring up a good point while we're doing this. We don't expect this to be a perfect process the first year through, so we can only get better. Absolutely, so.
We printed it though, is it different than the one we printed? No.
No, it's the same.
is the one we just went through.
You already have it in there.
Yep, if you already have it, you're good. Oh, wow. If you could just mark GLP, that'd be wonderful. Good suggestion.
I mean, out of all these.
That's just a GLP.
I'll take that extra paper.
No, this is what you everybody. This is more important.
What will help you is if they're not labeled, there's an O2 that will tell you it's GLP, O4 will tell you it's the elementary, and O1 will
thank
tell
you.
you
O2
it's the high school.
Thank you.
O4 is the GLP.
O4 is GLP.
O4, I know my codes by heart, and so that's how you tell if it's not labeled.
Yep, locations, which is,
O4 is GLP, O2 is elementary, and O1 is the high school.
I must say,
And that'll be the third section of the number.
is that finance too?
Okay. So for anyone who does not know me, I'm the GLP principal. As we started the budget process at the GLP, we looked at what initiatives we needed to support our instruction, what truly were our budgetary needs that would benefit our students to raise rigor and improve the educational experience, and we looked at where we could cut spending so that we could support those areas that were of our most priority. In doing so, some general requests that are reflected in our budget are the possibility of an additional grade 1 teacher to help with our class sizes, an increase of a special ed part-time teacher to full-time. And you're not seeing that in this budget, but you will see that in the future at staffing meetings.
and what I did want to point out, every single administrator was asked to touch if they wanted any staffing additions or reductions. That guides their budget for this year. So when you're looking at supplies and materials, they're making those assumptions on supplies and materials for what they're going to anticipate they need. So for instance, Ms. Carter said if with grade 1, if there's an addition, she may have more supplies that she's going to need in grade 1. So you're going to see that in the presentation. So while this is not the staffing part, you need to be aware of the idea the administrative team looked at. Everyone sat down and said, where do we need to be as a district for next year? So by no means is it definitive, but we need some guiding force as to what we're looking at for next year.
Lauren, can you repeat that?
Sure. So when you're looking at some of our general budget increases that I'm going to point out, they go with the possibility of the chance that we may have an additional first grade to help with our class sizes at that level, an increase of, right now, we have a current part-time special ed teacher with the possibility of that person going to full-time, and then some minimal increases in the special areas to support those additions. So again, those are possibilities of staffing, but in order to account for those, it may affect our budget at this point that we're addressing.
And what are special areas for those who don't know?
Art, music, library, phys ed. Okay. The supplies that have increased are to cover instructional materials across the building, safety supplies such as badges, signage, which actually came up on our laundry list that we're looking at of when you walk into the GLP, people don't necessarily know where to go. So we're looking at some signage and other materials to support programs and events such as kindergarten registration, screening processes, newsletters, reading nights, math nights, and for those of you who are familiar with GLP, all of those things require supplies and materials to support those. Some other areas in our budget that had some slight increases are grades 1 and 2. Have a slight increase to support the possibility, again, of that additional grade 1 teacher, the retention of a current grade 2 teacher that we added this year. This will address the need for lower class size and also to provide the appropriate materials and supplies to support the initiatives of the Common Core learning standards, modules for instruction, and the future new math program. In order to keep that instruction current, as we shift into those standards, we have to change many of our materials to more content-driven, nonfiction materials. It requires teachers to take materials that they've been teaching for years and switch over to more current materials that are aligned to the standards, raise the rigor. So they're slowly switching over many of the supplies and materials that they use for their instructional strategies to the more current things that are aligned. We certainly can't use things that aren't aligned. So we have to gradually do that. We can't do that overnight because it would have too much of a budget impact. So we set those as priorities and cut where we could. We have minimal increases in a few of our special areas such as art, phys ed, and science so that they too can support the Common Core in an integrated approach with current and appropriate materials. And again, they're trying to support content and nonfiction in their areas because we do have an integrated approach in those areas. So I would say if you looked at our budget, some of the key areas you would see would be grades 1 and grade 2, some in the special areas, and mostly it's really to just increase instructional materials so they're more current.
Okay, and rather than do question and answer right now, we're going to have the three principals present at one time. So Mark, if you could pass out yours. And then we'll do a group question and answer.
What does it look like, Mark?
Here, I got it. It's coming around.
If I could, while Mark is passing out his papers, I think it's important for everybody at this table to know that the entire budgeting process is a K-12 endeavor. So we don't do it in isolation so that it seems as if you're competing at one level against another one. So what you're seeing, which Lauren and Kelly make sound so simple, is hours and hours of conversation that everybody sits through to see what the impact is on every single level. So I just wanted to make sure and that's one of the reasons why they're sitting next to each other to talk as well.
And the other thing with the elementary budget, if you saw my email from earlier today, this is the updated elementary budget. I did not include the BOCES in the line, so that is me, so that's why we had the updated one.
Okay.
Oh, that one's up to, sorry.
That's an updated one. Yep.
Okay, Mike, I need a copy.
All righty, here it comes back.
Sorry, I updated mine, so I'm good.
No, you're going to get sick.
That's the only one that's
Oh,
updated.
I better get one of them.
Do you need one? You're welcome.
Okay, and what you're seeing also when you see the word COSER, basically when we sign up for BOCES, BOCES is this mammoth beast of all different services you can actually sign up for. And we, at the end of this process in March, we adopt the BOCES budget and everything. But all the different services that we sign up for are under what they call COSERs. So it's just different areas and different services that you can order through BOCES. Okay. Yes, it is, because they're providing the service. BOCES provides a service for all school districts, which makes it basically, in essence, cheaper for you to get the service through them than if you were to have it through your own staffing, because you don't have to pay staff to get in and all that sort of stuff.
Okay. All right, I'm Mark Graff, elementary principal. Just to echo what Lauren and Kelly said, the initiatives really that we're moving forward to are the increased rigor, implementing the Common Core, and really making sure that we get the best program for math that we can get. We are piloting 2 programs right now, Envisions Math and Go Math. We have teachers doing them, and pretty favorable on both ends. So it's going to be a big decision. And at this point, I guess I would point out in the textbook line, which is about two-thirds of the way down, you'll see a big increase from 42 to 56,000. That will be the math program. That's the difference in the textbook money from the previous year. The one thing that we've been talking about a lot is getting kids to read and giving them opportunities to read. The library is a big issue in the building right now. We only have a librarian about 4.5 hours, 2 days a week. So that's going to be, I'm going to ask you guys, hopefully to make that a priority in the budgeting process so that we can make sure that the kids have access to the library when they need it. We are also going to get an additional special ed class in the building, and that's going to cause our special areas, again, phys ed, art, music, computer, to increase by a section. So there'll be some corresponding increases with that. And then the other area that we've been talking about this year is the Gifted and Talented program, which was reduced last year, and it's suffering because of that, in all honesty. So that's going to be an area that will probably be discussion as we get into the staffing piece to the puzzle. I do want to point out that the grade levels 3, 4, 5, and 6, you'll see that they all increased this year. Those increases are all related to reading materials that will help our rigor, help our implementation of the Common Core. So that's why you see those increases there. The computer lab traditionally has not had a budget for the elementary school. I don't know the history there, but she does have some needs. So you will see from 0 to 600. She needs to order some headphones that need to be replaced out, and a couple of chairs and things like that. So that's what falls into that area. Our equipment line, we are having discussions within the faculty and staff on what our priorities are going to be for our equipment amount this year. I know we're in dire need of cafeteria tables, for example. The ones that are in there are ancient and falling apart, and the chairs are getting rickety. So we're going to have to make some decisions there on how we're going to use those funds.
And the equipment line, Mark, if I could just interject,
Yeah.
the equipment line for all the buildings, we have set basically at the previous year, if not a little lower. That's something district-wide. We review all of the equipment because just the way that it actually works, that's the one code we cannot transfer to any other codes throughout the year. So when we have equipment, it has to stay in equipment. We can't move it to supplies, we can't move it anywhere else. So that's a district-wide function. So we put each building at basically the same level from the previous year.
And I did just want to point out one other line, because I think all the budgets have it. I think it's about 5 or 6 down, the miscellaneous line. That's the rebate that we get from Life Touch. They take the school pictures for the kids when they order their packages. We get a little kickback on that. And those funds are used for student-related things.
And so we get the revenues for it to
Right.
totally offset.
Right, exactly. So that could go up or down depending on, what the rebate is. But traditionally at the elementary, it's been about $1,300. So.
And it's always, like you said, it's always been used for student things.
Right.
So field day, we use it to provide lunch for the kids. We'll buy assemblies for the kids. It's always directly related to going back to the kids.
Okay.
Anything else for you?
Nope.
Okay, Mr. Cervoni, you're up.
Thanks. Hi, good evening, everybody. My name's Jeff Cervoni. I'm the principal of the junior senior high school.
And can you pass out your materials?
Yep.
Thank you.
Sorry. There you go. Just take them all that way. All right, that way.
From that way.
Okay.
Let me address Steve Bosse's line, because the question has already come up, that we've seen the textbook line in Kelly's presentation, and we saw the textbook lines at each of the buildings.
I was gonna
It's the
ask
same amount, it's, if you look at the budget codes, it's the exact same budget codes, it's the exact same amount, we didn't double budget for it, it's just, it's Kelly's budget, so it is in hers, but since it is either an 01, an 02, or 04, it's also going to show up in each of the buildings. It is not double budgeted.
But it's part of both totals. That's the part that confuses me.
Correct, but when you take a look, Kelly's, we had to break hers out to kind of group hers together. She's district-wide, so hers, when we sat down and looked at it, we had to piecemeal that together because she has a hand everywhere, so it is part of the total. It is not double counted.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. You will see when we have the full budget, it's only going to be in the full budget once. But for Kelly not to at least have it in hers, that's a major part of her budget. One of the downsides that we actually have with the financial software package that we have right now, it only lets us break it out in certain ways. I can break it out by building, so Mark's building, Lauren's building, Jeff's building, or I can piecemeal it together like for Kelly and pull out the ones that Kelly has access to. So what you'll see is it's very difficult to only show it one time. So it's possible you can see it in two spots. When we run the whole thing as a whole, it's only running one time.
I know, but it kind of makes your puzzle look a lot bigger.
Yes.
It's not her budget. Kelly's district-wide budget is under 5% with one exception, the math textbooks. That's the only thing that makes her budget go up over 5%, and that is because she's buying 4 years of math text, 4 or 5?
5.
5 years of textbooks in 1 year. Otherwise, her budget is under 5% if you take that out. Okay? And we really did work with each of the administrators to say, please, you need to keep your, everyone will tell you. I sat with everyone and said, we have to look at this. We have to make sure you're down further. Keep going, keep cutting. Is that not true? So she is not over.
It might be best not to look at the total, because in some cases that total looks like it's double, but it's really not.
Correct. But we still need to put that in there so you can see for hers. Yep.
This makes yours look big.
4 years.
Next year you'll look great.
See, I think
Okay,
it's the opposite.
Jeff, go ahead.
Okay, thanks. Once again, my name is Jeff Cervoni. I'm the principal of the junior senior high school. As we began the budget process in the junior senior high school, we went into it with the idea that we wanted to maintain a high level of programming for our students in the building, while also keeping a stable, fiscally responsible budget. I personally met with all of our departments and our department chairs to talk about our budgetary needs and the monies that we need to drive some new initiatives for next year. Departments focused maintaining their focus was to maintain their current programming and what was needed to increase academic rigor and raise student expectations here at the junior senior high school. I'm just going to highlight some of the things we do and the things we're planning to do in the upcoming year. One of the new initiatives we'd like to put into place is the addition of staffing an academic learning center in the junior senior high school. And I'm not even sure that would really require any more budgeted money, but it's an exciting thing for our students to have some academic supports as they go through 7 through 12 here in the building. Our PE department, our physical education department, they're working hard with ECC to become certified to teach some college credit-bearing courses. One of the things they'd like to see eventually happen in the junior senior high school is a personal trainer course. The math department continues to buy calculators to supply all of our students. They also continue to work on materials that supplement math vocabulary, trying to strengthen our students, in mathematics. Thank you, Mrs. Feasley.
Jeff, if I can interrupt
Sure.
for a moment. That is a requirement that we own the computers.
Okay.
That we
Yeah.
own the calculators. So
Right.
if you could just back up for a minute and talk about that.
Yeah, we are required by the state to provide all of our students with a calculator,
Whether they have one or not.
whether they have one or not. So we need to have enough in-house.
Mandates, unfunded state mandates.
No.
The district needs to purchase them. Yes, Mr. Pratt.
The question was, when did that come about? That's been around for...
2001?
As long as I've been...
2001 was when they first brought in the calculator use.
A lot of districts choose to ignore it because the money is.
And we do ask students to buy a calculator, and a lot of them do.
What kind of calculator? Is it the $150 calculator?
80, right, Laura?
What I can tell you is,
80-ish, TI-83, what are they?
what some schools do is they'll have a class set that they share among a math department, so if a child doesn't have one, they can get their hands on one possibly. And what they'll advise you to do is buy one for your child anyway, so they have one that they're familiar with, and then they have it to take to college with them and all of those things. But ultimately, the regulation says that you are to provide a calculator for every child if it's required for instruction. And at the high school level, a calculator is required for instruction.
And it's funny, because Mrs. Feasley and I were just talking about calculators yesterday or the day before, and we have...
What kind of calculators?
The high school Regents programs, all three of them, algebra, geometry, and trigonometry, all require that the students have a graphing calculator. We use the Texas Instrument calculator, either the 83 plus or the 84 plus. Both, they're comparable in price. The 83 pluses I can get right now for about $86 a piece. The 84 pluses are about $92 a piece.
Plus batteries.
Plus batteries,
Plus batteries for all of them.
We encourage our students to purchase the calculators on their own so that they have them. However, state regs do say that we have to, the wording is funny, we must provide a calculator for every single student for the final exam. For the final exam.
Which they all take at the same time.
But the thing is that if they haven't practiced on those calculators all year long, they're not going to know how to use them for the final exam. So they really need to have them for homework, for classwork, etc. So in the last couple of years, we have started a loan program where the kids can sign them out like a textbook. We still encourage the kids to buy their own and have them. Every single classroom teacher has between 8 to 12 classroom calculators that they keep in their rooms for the kids to use if they don't have it that day or whatever. Some parents won't let the kids bring them to school. I don't blame them. Keep it at home, keep it safe. We are trying to stockpile that. I would like to get at least 15 in every classroom, high school classroom, for the teachers to pass out during class. But the kids still need to have them to take with them and to do homework. And that's the piece right now that we're trying to do, is to get, once word gets out that you can loan them like a calculator, I'm afraid that I'm going to have 400 kids at my door saying, I want a calculator, and I only have 150.
All right,
So we're slowly stockpiling.
Laura has old ones with cracked screens.
We'll get to more questions when we're done.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, so that was the math department. The music department, and I'll just go through a few of our key departments here, but the music department wants to start something called Practice Buddies for next year. And that's where they send high school students down to the GLP and the elementary schools to work with students to help them with their instruments and
Who
sort of.
initiated that?
The whole department, Ashley Martello was big with it, but Sarah Roberts and Jen Tylock. So I thought that was a really neat idea to send our accomplished musicians down there to work with those younger students. Let's see, we've started a fiddle club and a chamber orchestra. And the wind ensemble have started a yearly tradition of taking on an extra concert to represent Eden. The fiddle club is a neat club that meets here in the mornings, and they sort of jam away, and it's become a big deal here. They also play in the Mary Seton Room prior to the BPO concert, which allows our students to go to the BPO for free. The string quartet is performing in Eden Heights to bring music to the residents. So a lot of community outreach through the musical department, which is great for them to see the great things we do here in the junior, senior high school.
And Jeff, just going back a minute.
Yeah.
You mentioned the music program. Your equipment repair line is down significantly.
Yep.
That's why. You actually went from 13.9 to about 10.5. And is that through the careful planning over the years?
It is through careful planning. They know, the music department's well aware that their programming is expensive. And they have planned carefully and used their resources wisely. And they did come in under budget. So our foreign language department, they're looking at new innovative ideas for the next school year. They want to start trying to do a flipped classroom. They want to start using a website called My Big Campus. And Mrs. Janowski told me about a neat website called mylingo.com that they're trying to incorporate in their lessons. The ELA department, they just continue to raise rigor, student expectations. The tech students are reading the projects that they're doing, really great stuff happening in our ELA department. So they're just continuing with what they've always done. Our tech department is looking to start a media production room, which will not only incorporate all the different elements of media production, but we're looking to have our announcements be broadcast over our televisions. Lucinda, you can expand on that if you want, through our closed circuit.
We already have a TV studio that came in as
Yep.
part of the 2000 project, and it's been updated through the years with our new technology team.
Yep.
Who's got experience at it, this is Mr. Alvin who did that. He'd like to expand it. We have a media distribution system already in the building, being able to connect to it and do like a morning broadcast, so they've been talking to my department too.
How long have they had that?
The media distribution came in at the end of the phone project, so it's 2005, so, yeah.
Yeah. Mr. Jones is hopeful that they possibly could get that going by the end of this year, but it's a great project that they're doing down there in the technology department. Our science department, their budget, if you look at the science number, is a little bit up, but what I can tell the BAT team is that the science department is replacing a lot of old equipment that just simply has worn out over the years. Some of it is big ticket items like an oven that's used for different chemistry projects, to dehydrate things and heat things and make different chemical changes. We have some Bunsen burners that have simply just been used for 20 years that, like your grill, when it gets old enough and things burn long enough, they just need to be replaced. And stuff like that just isn't cheap. It's big ticket items. And when you have a lot of students going through our labs, using it constantly, it tends to wear out. So Mr. Quaz, we worked together quite a bit. His budget was higher than it was. We worked to lower it. We said, what's essential? What can we do without? We're trying to keep our budget within a certain percentage. And really, at the end of the day, I'm proud to say that the junior senior high school budget is about 3% over or increase from last year. So the departments did a really nice job.
Jeff, I have a question for you. One of the initiatives that's come from the high school is for the science labs to meet every other day.
Correct.
And granted, without incurring large staffing costs, it might not happen across the board.
Right.
Has that been figured into your materials and supply budget as well?
It has.
Perfect.
It has. Right now, just to sort of follow up on what Mrs. Anzalone said, our labs meet once every fourth day in our cycle, and we're looking to increase that to be every other day. And obviously, if kids are meeting every other day, they're using more materials, and things will get used more.
Okay, so looking at that, if I can open up for about 5 minutes or so for question and answer. Mr. Minicom, I believe you were first.
Yes, the elephant in the room is BOCES here. That's about 87% of your budget. Tell us a little bit about it. And do you have any control over it?
Is it the first line? Oh,
No, the middle one.
23, you're looking at 2280.
That's for special ed with, and you are going to hear more about special ed when Mrs. Johnson actually does her presentation. So again, that is a very big ticket item. All the 20. What was that?
Yeah.
And again, what you see is one of the limitations of finance manager. I have to print everything with the location of 01 for Jeff's building, which includes some things which are not Jeff's. So you will see the BOCES in there. You will see some PPS in there. You will see textbooks in there, which really, again, are not Jeff's. But what we do is we do sit down, we do take a look at the vocational tech students, special ed, all of that to see where we can actually pare that down. So yes, that is a big ticket item. You will also see that presentation later on at the next meeting. Okay?
If it's special ed, why do you call it BOCES?
I'm sorry, could you say again?
If it's special ed, why do you call it BOCES?
because we do get services through BOCES for special education students. We have our own special education teachers, and we also contract with BOCES for services as well.
Does that include the vocational program or no?
Yep.
It does?
Yeah.
So it's not all
And
special.
BOCES is
Not
a
all
service
special ed,
provider.
no.
They're not all special ed.
What percentage of this number is special ed?
We will have that for you at the next presentation. How about that?
That's a good question,
We are
Don.
going to break out the
That's a
BOCES
good-
budget for you, so we can do that for you. Okay, we don't have it today because, again,
Cloaking something that is special ed by calling it BOCES, where some of these kids, BOCES is going to be the only answer, and it ain't special ed.
no, and that's true. I do not want to make it appear that all BOCES are special ed. BOCES, we have special ed, we have vocational tech, we have stuff that falls under my area for finance and legislation, we have technology purchases through BOCES, we have a lot of different things that go through BOCES. Our BOCES line is multi-million-dollar through BOCES, so this is just a portion of that.
Do you find it's a good value using BOCES other than other roads?
5 hours on the BOCES.
Yes. We do go through line by line and see, can we do it cheaper in-house? Can we do it cheaper going through another vendor? Or is it cheaper going through BOCES? Now, we get aid back about 56% the following year with BOCES on most lines. So when you factor that into account and you take a look at what it would cost us to hire a staff person to do that, it doesn't make sense for us to increase our staff, but we can have BOCES do it at a far cheaper rate.
So, for example, one program might be a suspension program. If I have one student that needs to be out of the building for suspension, it costs $63 for us to bus them over to a suspension program in a day. It costs me a whole lot more than $63 to have a staff member here for a day. If I have 5 kids that need to be suspended in a day, then it might be cheaper for me to have a program here as opposed to shipping them out. A typical student going to BOCES VOTEC this year is about $80,000 a year. So a BOCES VOTEC program is about a $17,000 cost. Next year, that cost will go up to about $8,200 a year. If we were to find in a particular program, like our technology, industrial technology program, there'll be a lot of kids that are going into one program. We might be better served to have our own staff member here. So those are the pieces that we start to look at.
Thank you. It's a good question.
It's a very good question.
I got one for...
And it's Mr. Johnson, for the minutes.
Okay, yes. I asked Lucinda here, this calculator that you're required to purchase, okay, which sounds a little sketchy to me, but do you know if eventually she was talking about iPads or something similar, do you know if these iPads are adaptable or have that where you could put that on them? You don't?
The graphing calculator, I do not believe so, no. Not the type of calculator. I mean, maybe in the future, they might have an app for a graphing calculator, but
But I would even say, even if it does, the student probably will not be able to use an
Because-
iPad on a final exam because
Right.
of all the other things you can do with an iPad.
because of
which-
the internet access and yeah.
Which you might be able to get to a graphic calculator on the web, which you can do now at home.
Right.
But you have to shut the web down during Regents exams, so
Right.
you can't use it.
Can I get one more question?
Mr. Johnson, you can.
4.5 hours once a week, the
Yeah.
library is open?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have to have a library in there, or can a teacher bring her class in and be in there with the class?
Right now, the librarian is there. So the students are coming in when the librarian is there in order to check out books and things.
Right.
But we could, I don't know whether we could train somebody, that'd be a conversation we'd have to have.
A classroom teacher can take their kids to the library.
Oh, absolutely, right.
Part of
They
what-
couldn't sign, but they
But
couldn't
as far
sign
as
up.
checking out books and
I
stuff,
understand. Okay.
But
Part of what
could they go to
happens
the
in a-
library?
Yes, but part of what happens at a library is when the teachers be able to get a break, a lunch, is they go, the kids go to a discussion. Because they're always supervisors, so.
Now, we have time probably for one more question, then the superintendent and I still have to have our presentations.
Lauren, I'll ask Lauren a question. The art, music, those programs, the current art teacher is shared now at the JLP, or what's going on?
Well, I always had a part-time art teacher.
Okay.
Art got cut back, well, not really cut back, we just, because of cuts overall in the district, my part-time person became a shared person, so I have a traveling art person.
Okay, so it would be more convenient and better for the students if there was one back at the school?
I have the exact same amount of time I've always had. It just had to do with overall district amount of time we needed art. So instead of having a separate person, I just have someone, so they're there the same amount of time at the GLP, it just happens to be a shared person.
It's the high school
The
that
cut
helps.
actually came here and trickled down.
Oh, okay.
So I have, right, so it
There
hasn't,
used to be 2 art teachers here, there's 1.5 now.
Okay.
And then it trickled down.
so it didn't impact my program, it just so happens I just have a different staff member.
Okay. And then the first grade, you need a first grade teacher because of the amount of kids that are in
We're always looking at
kindergarten?
class size at the GLP. So we've had this conversation multiple times at this level. So last year, we added a first grade teacher, if you remember, mid-year, who was shared in the classrooms. We moved that teacher with the largest group, who's currently now in second grade. The position's now in second grade. So with the hope, we're trying to maintain them around 20, 19, 20. So right now, we're looking at to continue that, keeping that low class size at the primary level. So we're trying to get that back at the first grade.
Okay.
What's the class average in kindergarten?
I'm about 21. 21, 20. 21, 22, and then 23, 24,
Okay. now
depending on which class.
And again, I know we had a lot that we covered here in a short period of time. More questions will come up, and you probably already have some more, but if they come up afterwards, please email each of the principals, and we'll make sure that we get back to you as well. And now we have the superintendent.
I didn't have to waste my paper.
Well, and we said, Barbara, in the beginning, with the transportation. So for this first time, we're printing them out for everyone.
Did you guys want these, or did you already print them out?
Many people said they brought this next time. We'll look at-
And there are some revisions anyways, but
What letter?
are we good? All right, when you take a look at mine, what you'll see is although it's on one page, it's not necessarily a whole lot less expensive than some of the other departments, but there are fewer expenses that fall into this one. For the most part, if you see the lines that come across, 1010 for the Board of Education, 1060 for district meetings, 1240 for chief school, 1420 for legal, and then on down. So it's broken up into these form of categories. I'm going to start at one that is actually the simplest one for me to explain, which is toward the bottom of the page, which is 1420, legal. Do you see it?
Yep.
All right, if you come into the school year for 12-13, you'll see a $16,900 cost that is not there on any of the budgets for 13-14, 14-15. That was the cost of a consultant for a search for a superintendent. And so that is gone. What you'll also see is the advertising is gone for that. What you will see, though, is an increase on the BOCES line. So, Don, you're going to see BOCES come in a lot of places because that's who we pay. For a BOCES line of $14,719, that is a labor relations code line. And what they do for us is they help us with all of our negotiations. We have 4 contracts plus all individual contracts that are up. They also help me when it comes to certain improper practice charges, or it could be FERPA issues, things that we wouldn't necessarily go through with our school board attorney. Oh, sorry. So The freedom of information rules, basically, we get requests all the time from courts or from different parents for information about children, and we have to be very careful about what we give out, and so we do tend to seek some legal advice in some cases. When I switch over into another line where you won't see a big change, you'll just see what we consider to be the cost of living increase, would be right below it under personnel. This is where we print, for the most part, we don't print a lot. For the most part, we do most things digital, but that $3,000 expenditure for next year, or budgeted expenditure for next year, is our district newsletter, our calendar, anything that might go out to the community if we actually had to do something with printing. We try not to do too much. Moving back on up then, I'm going to go into 1240, which is the school attorney. This is the school attorney fees when it comes to things that are related to school employees or that are related to things that we would not share with our Erie 2 attorneys, but we might, that are more board related. In this particular case, it could be consultation on things that we're afraid that we might be, that we could get into trouble with. It could be grievances, again, improper practice charge, but they are on a much more private level than something that we might do through a BOCES level attorney. Moving up one more line under a 1060 under district meetings, what you're going to see is some slight increases or decreases on this one. I'm going to start right from the top. So just a cost of living increase on supplies, periodicals, again, just a few dollars, advertising, just a few dollars, a little bit more on conference and travel, and then membership. That conference and travel, these are mandated trainings for new board members. We do have 3 board members that are up for election this year, so we have to make sure we budget for their mandated trainings, which are about $400 a piece, if not more. The same thing would apply to anything that we intend to do in terms of advertising in relation to capital projects or to a board vote. If we move up again under Board of Education for 1010, what you're going to see is an increase in the second one, which is legal notices. It's almost doubled. Everything else staying the same. We are hoping, with the board's approval, to go out for a December vote for a possible capital project. It costs a lot of money to do a vote. And so we have doubled the line under legal notices, which again, every single one of them is approximately $450, and you have to do 3 in every paper that's considered your primary advertising source. And then moving up to the top of the line again, not a huge increase in any of the lines, but an increase that has a big budget item to it under miscellaneous. I know Mark mentioned miscellaneous, but on this one, these are the needs assessment studies that we've been talking about since last March. So this is the what about GLP? We were going to do a full-blown school closure study. We want to do an educational study as well to find out what about a middle school model. What should that look like here? Who would it be? Would it be a 6, 7, 8? Would it be a 5, 6, 7, 8? Does it mean that GLP, if its enrollment is a little bit smaller, should incorporate 3rd grade as well? And we don't want that to be based on finances. We want it to be based on education. So that's a separate consult. And then beyond that is our consultants for architectural firm or a construction management firm as we move forward toward any possible capital project.
Questions for superintendent?
Yes.
On the attorney's fees, I know BOCES supplies attorneys for many things. Do you use them for labor contracts?
Those are mostly my negotiations. We do have one contract that we are working with our own school board attorney that started before we actually had this COSER. This is a new COSER for us this year. And so there is one contract that we are still working with on our school board attorney, but all other contracts will roll over into Erie 2's consultant fees because we do get a really good deal off of them.
Do you find that the BOCES legal services are less expensive than the individual firms?
If they don't sit at the table, they don't cost me any money, and that's really nice. So I can get some answers from them if I'm willing to wait a day or two, whereas our school board attorney will answer me within an hour, and that's really a nice feeling sometimes, too. But the Erie 2 BOCES attorneys are about $120 an hour should I need them to sit, and that is not reimbursable or aidable, whereas the $14,719 is about 56% 56% aidable, so that we will get money back on that for next year.
I have a question on the chief school administrator. I think it's the membership. Can you elaborate on that? It goes from 500 to 760 to 3,100 to 2,200 under memberships. 1,240?
Those are things like our district memberships that we actually have. So.
I just think there's a lot
NISBA's in there.
Down on it.
Well, you know why it came down is because we're no longer a part of the Erie County School Boards Association. We're not part of the rural school.
We're part of New York State School Board, but
right.
not Erie County.
That's right, not Erie County and not rural schools. Now, there's a cost to that, so when we do mandated trainings for board members, we end up paying more for the trainings to state than we would for our local.
Okay.
Any other questions for the superintendent? Okay, come up.
You have 2 minutes.
Not a
I'm
problem.
kidding.
I'll be honest, my presentation I think is going to be very simple. What I looked at is, number one, I challenged every administrator to not go over that 5%. So I myself made sure that I actually did that on all lines going across. So my goal in putting together the budget, and again, this is my first year as a business administrator, was to make sure we weren't missing anything from previous years. Most of the stuff that falls under the finance department are the boring things such as insurance and retirement and all that sort of stuff, bids. So really what we did for the most part is we rolled over. We don't have a lot of new anything in any of these lines, except for 2 major increases that you're actually going to see in this budget. Number one, you're going to see under the liability insurance, which is about a little more than halfway, 1910,420. Liability went from 79 to 95. Insurance, we estimated going up about 7%. I can't do anything about that. The insurance companies tell us, here is your insurance rate. And unless we shop around to a different insurance company altogether, we have done that in the past. We have very competitive rates, so I don't think we're going to see that really go down. It's just their annual increase. What we did put in this line, and Patty, you'll probably be very happy, we did budget $10,000 for the student accident insurance. We have to put that in there. We said that we would address that for the coming budget. It's in there. The other major increase that you're actually going to see, again, going through BOCES near the bottom. You're seeing the biggest increase go from $47,000 to $90,812. And what that is for is BOCES, just like every school district, has a lot of physical property out there that they must maintain. What Erie 2 BOCES have said, a lot of their buildings are in disrepair. And sooner or later, and I mentioned this at the last board meeting, not every budget advisory team member was here, BOCES has told us they need to make repairs to those buildings. Since we are a component district of BOCES, we share in the cost of BOCES repairs. This increase is for the repairs for this coming year. Our share is roughly $42,000. We don't have a choice in that. It is just a cost that is passed on to each component district. You're part of BOCES. I see Mr. Johnson looking like, really? Do we have to? Yes, unfortunately. It is just one of those things, like when we look at capital projects and whether or not we should go forward with it. And again, I would say, even with that increase of the 42, what we get back from BOCES and the savings that we actually get from the services they provide and the reduced staffing that we have, it still pays. Even though we have to pay this big nut at one time, it still makes sense for us to go with BOCES as a whole. If we were to drop BOCES, our personal district budget would go up millions of dollars. So I understand that looking at a $42,000 hit this year is not something any of us want to do. In fact, I can tell you every business official grumbled something fierce when we were told this, but it just is a fact of life that we have to deal with. Some of the other lines, I mean, just if you look at what goes in a finance department budget, again, the real exciting, sexy stuff such as near the top, Omni, which is 403B, which is retirement. We pay an administrator to handle all the retirement for the district. After that, we actually have to inventory every item of certain value in the district. I mean, without getting too technical, we have to have a value of our property. And we have to do an update for that. So you're seeing an update fee in there. We have to account for repairs for faxes and postage machine. Again, as I said, exciting stuff here in my area, but it nonetheless is. The 1320s lines that you're actually seeing, these are our auditor fees. And the external auditor, we are absolutely required to. The internal auditor, still legally at this point, we are required to. Internal auditors, once we have less than 1,500 students, it's a double-edged sword. We don't want to see our student numbers drop. But if they do, this becomes optional. But I will tell you, on the optional side as well, and it depends where we're at when we get to that point, our internal auditors give us a lot of advice and help keep us out of trouble before it even goes to the external auditor route or the Office of the State Controller. I am in contact with our internal auditors all the time, I can tell you. So I'm sure I'm probably going to get a Christmas card from our internal auditors because we want to make sure we're doing it right. Then, let's see, well, legal notices, the tax collection. So when you're looking at 1330, that's for tax collection for all of the towns. 1345 is the bidding process. And then finally, under 1380, we have to, every year, we are required to file disclosure notices for all of our borrowing and all of our investments. And as I said, exciting stuff, but we're required to do that. And the fee to go along with that. Questions? Yes, Mr. Minicom.
If you have a refund property tax, just tell me. I don't understand how that reads, what that really means.
Yep, let me see which line.
479. It's $15,000.
To the bottom.
We have a couple 479, so which one are you looking at? Sorry.
Well, it's
1964.
Okay, it's not a refund. We actually get charged for the property taxes.
that's like a payment due taxes or something?
No, we don't have pilots here. So no, this is actually what we actually pay for the tax collection and all that. So we also have revenue which comes.
Collection process
Yeah,
fee or
correct.
cost?
Correct.
Because it went up or down like a yo-yo from the budget and then expenses 12 and 13, and it was clear.
Yeah.
Correct, yeah.
How come it would be so?
I'd have to look in the previous years. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head.
All right, thank you.
Yep,
Well, if I could,
you can.
again, it's the expense column that you see it going down on.
Yep.
Yes.
The budgeted column has stayed the same, so maybe you could just address that.
True.
They're pretty similar, but this was
Yeah, the budgets have, gone down, but you're right, because we don't know where that's going to end. So, yeah, it did end in 12, 13, and 8, but we don't know where that's going to end.
Thank you.
Correct. Other questions? Wow, we got through a lot of information. First of all, I'm going to say I'm sure with a lot of this information that was disseminated today, it's probably leaving a lot of questions for a lot of people right now. We understand this is not the end of the budget process. We're going to see the full budget process at some point with everything brought together. You're seeing little bits and pieces of everyone's presentations. It will all come together as one full presentation at the end. We will have heard all the individual pieces, so when we bring it together and look at what the total is, it's a little different than how we've handled it in the past, of seeing the whole budget and then going through it, and the whole budget and going through it. So all the pieces will come together. Mr. Johnson.
I want to put one question here. Do we know how many students, and this is probably going to go to you, go to BOCES? I mean, it seems like we...
Which VOTEC?
You understand?
Yeah, which program?
I'm not talking BOCES, I'm not talking...
You're talking about the vocational tech program?
Yes.
We can run the numbers for you if we don't know off the top of our head.
But roughly 7.
70 out
I
of
think I
how
saw
many?
70.
130?
Out of a class about 260, 70 out of about 260, because right now our cohort's running about 130.
How old are they when the kids start? Like in 7th, 8th? Just junior? Junior and senior?
35, 40. And that's the vocational programs.
Yeah, that's what,
Yep.
I'm thinking of the...
2-year programs.
HVAC.
Yes, carpentry, whatever. Yep, okay.
John, did you have an increase in staffing that you were asking for, an increase rate?
Sure.
I do believe the question was for Mr. Cervoni.
We've looked at some programs and have talked about some staffing changes in a couple different areas.
I didn't hear mention any.
Yeah, I didn't hear you.
Yeah, I didn't mention anything because we're still talking about them, and I just was focused on budgets here today. But we are looking at the technology department, the phys ed department, foreign language goes into that. We look at class requests, class demands, changes, past personnel.
If I can tag on to that as well.
Size.
So part of what we look at when we title goes, and Lauren mentioned it, is when we did some staffing cuts up here, because we had a lower enrollment, it didn't affect the program at the elementary schools, but it did cause staff to share. And so one of the things we take a look at as we look at staffing is what's the cost of that sharing? Not in financial dollars, but in constraints to a master schedule. And so those are complicated conversations for us to have, and Jeff has just started the scheduling process, so I think we're going to get a much better idea on that. The second thing that we look at is, because we slipped from a block schedule last year to a traditional, and then we're trying to go a straight 9 for next year, is how will that ease the schedule, which we don't know yet, but hopefully Jeff will have all kinds of answers for me at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning, right? But beyond that, too, when we start to look at programming, is which programs that are good for students can also generate revenue. And so what you'll hear me talk about at the board meeting tonight is an opportunity, and I see Karen Hall here. I know you didn't know I was going to say that, but of internships and grants that we can generate out of business academies or health and wellness academies. You might see Hamburg do something like that, or something with our industrial tech program for academies or internships, or partnerships with collegial institutions or business partnerships. And so I'm really excited, but you have to be ready when they come. You can't have the grant or the revenue source or the internship opportunity from Cornell or Geneseo or anything come your way and say, well, we're going to add staff next year. So when we start to talk about this, we start to say, okay, which ones have such a large impact on so many students that we can't ignore that.
So your add to the tech program then, I take it, is to reduce the amount of children going to BOCES?
That is the hope. At $8,200 a year per kid, at a $17,000 cost plus busing. If we find programs where a large number of our kids are going out for CAD or welding or so, and we can house it here, and I can actually get a revenue, not a revenue, but certainly not be paying that kind of money out to BOCES, that's exactly what we're going to look at. Or a personal trainer where the kids are coming out with a certification, where now we're paying that same money to send them to BOCES, absolutely.
Sandy, I forgot what I was going to ask. Oh, when we send out kids to BOCES and we bus them out, do we pay by the bus? Rose, do we pay by the bus run, or do we pay per kid in the bus?
To BOCES, we pay per child. Right now, it's $8,000 a year per child.
But, and the bus is included in that?
No.
Whether there's 10 kids in there?
No, the bus is
50?
our cost. The $8,000 is the cost for the instruction at BOCES.
But it's the same cost if there's 10 kids on that.
Or whether
Yes.
there's 50?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, now what we're going to do, we've got about 2 minutes to break for our board meeting, so thank you, everyone.